It's not every day that we get to interview someone that is the champion of best hair from 2012 to now 2017. Ladies and gentlemen, I bring to you the director of the Greater Williamsburg's Incubator, aka the Launchpad, Tim Ryan. Thanks for being with us today, Tim.
Thanks, Zach.
As we can see, this is for those of you that actually are watching with video. You can tell I have great hair, but I lose every year to this guy. Clearly, look at that. First question, always the hardest. How do you manage your hair every day?
Crazy enough, Zach, that's one of the most popular questions that I get, but I will tell you, it takes like 2 minutes. There's no brush, no comb or anything involved. It's just a little bit of hair gel and just bring it back, and it's that easy, man.
So you get that question a lot. Okay,
I do.
I thought I was going to ask some hard questions that you don't hear a lot. That's okay. What product do you use?
It's just your run of the mill hair gel, nothing fancy.
There you go. On the more lighter side, since this is a show about business, you run the incubator up in Williamsburg, Virginia, the Launchpad. You've been the director since the beginning.
Yep.
What is the Launchpad, and how did you get involved?
The Launchpad. So just like you said, we're a business incubator, and the way that I became involved really was a study was done a few years ago from William and Mary, and one of the things that they said that the area needed was a regional incubator. So rather than a standard incubator, if you will, where it's one locality that starts an incubator, this is regional in the sense of it was three different localities that came together. So in this case, it's James City County. It was the city of Williamsburg and York County. They all invest in this venture equally. So they put in equal amounts and in hopes of return of an equal return.
A lot of studies show that municipal based incubators are very hard to not run, but get success out of them. What are some of the things that you guys are doing to try and be on the more positive side of that?
Well, I think that one of the big things that I find most helpful is that when it comes to a government funded incubator, I mean, the people that run the government are government minded. And for the most part, they really stay out of my business. They understand that what they do and what we do are very different. I mean, so I treat them just as they're investors, and I have to report back to my board and show them how they're getting that return on their investment. But for the most part, they do a really good job of really not telling me how I need to manage everything, and they let me go after and do the things that I need to do in order to build a community and to build the businesses and not do it in a structured bureaucratic way.
One of the things that I think a lot of people, bureaucracies, governments, incubators, accelerators, manage incorrectly or track incorrectly are what I'll call vanity metrics. Let's say how much money was raised, not how much money in profit or how much money was actually made in revenue. What are some of the metrics? Do you believe that vanity metrics like that are bad metrics to track? And what are some of the metrics that you guys actually track?
Well, I agree with you that the vanity metrics, that's one of the biggest things that I push back on my board. I mean, the easy, quick metric that everybody wants to fall back to is occupancy. How many people do we have in the offices? And my pushback to my board is, look, if we wanted to fill this place, we could have filled it 10 times over. But if we fill it with a bunch of businesses that don't have a lot of potential, or they can't move forward, or they're not going to generate the revenue that we need, then we're going to start to dilute our brand, and that is going to open up a whole different world of problems that we have. So we're selective in terms of what companies we want to take. We're looking for high growth companies, and we define that whether it is the amount of revenue that they can generate, or the number of employees that they can hire. So that's one of the metrics that we look for, as opposed to occupancy. And when it comes to raising money, not all of our companies in here are about raising money. I mean, so they'll either they'll bootstrap, or they're the more traditional small business, if you will, that they want to grow at a slower pace and in a more organic nature. So our big thing is customers. How quickly can we get to revenue if they're a pre-revenue company, and how are they doing in terms of sales and generating revenue? Those are our big metrics.
So I think you've heard me talk a couple of times. You know that I believe that more jobs are not going to be created in the future, that we're going to have to create more companies, that less employees will work at each one. Hence, you're on the 1004 show. So with that being said, how do you how is jobs a number that you guys are tracking, knowing that less companies are going to be hiring more employees? If I said that right. So knowing that because of technology,
Mm-hmm.
that a company isn't going to have 100,000, 2,000, 10,000 employees. They might be able to do it with 5 or 10.
Right.
How are you managing and tracking that job number, knowing that less people will be hired per company?
Well, and quite honestly, I'm not sure how well of a job we're doing that just yet. I mean, a lot of the companies that we have are really small in nature, but and just getting their feet underneath them. But I mean, the big thing is to make sure that it's high growth. So if it's two people that are generating $1 million a year, as opposed to five people that are generating $1 million a year, uh, I mean, our argument back would be I mean, that's more profit that they potentially are generating, but it also means from as a reporting mechanism back to my board that's that's all taxes that are going back to them, that is going back into the community as a return on their investment.
Very cool. Looking back through my notes, I talked with the folks down at the Triangle in the research triangle, and they had some insane results for some of their stuff. I can't find it, but something like for every company that they had in there, I think they had 5 or 6, maybe even 7 jobs per company, which is kind of around knowing that they're not going to get to these super big companies. So it's interesting to see that as well. What are some of the biggest challenges that you have as the director of running the space?
The biggest challenge that I have is, I mean, we're really, in addition to building an incubator, we're trying to build a community of entrepreneurs. So in doing so, we've never had anything like this up here. So we're starting from scratch. So in addition to filling offices with high growth companies, we're also looking for that next generation of an entrepreneurial community. So we're filling, as we fill the space, uh, we're looking for sales folks, accounting folks, um, different types of service providers, software developers, those types of people, so that we can really round out the community and build it from there. Uh, we really focus on events, and if anyone ever has a chance to come to the Launchpad, or check us out online at our website, I mean, you'll gwlaunchpad.com. You'll see that by nature we're a really open and collaborative space. We feature as many events as we can, and we want to create those collisions, if you will, those serendipitous relationships. We want to bring people together. We want to start the communication, have those people meet, and then to see where those interactions lead to. That's what's really cool. And really for folks to have a place that they can come to and realize that they're not doing their venture on their own, that there's a lot of other people going through the exact same journey, that they're in the exact same position, and that they can come as a place, gather in a place that everyone's going through the same types of challenges.
What type of events or meetups are you guys doing, and how are you deciding which ones are going to be the best fit for you to grow that community?
We really vary. So we vary in times. So we do things. We'll do coffee meetups during the week. We will do events during the lunchtime, and we'll do events after hours. And they really range from something that could have no agenda whatsoever to we may feature a business and they have an opportunity to present who they are and what they do and solicit feedback from the people that are in the audience. Or we'll do things such as pitch perfect classes to help people with their pitch, or really focusing on the street smarts of business. So I mean, I'm a one person show, and I focus really hard on not duplicating anything. 1004 is an awesome platform for us to use that I don't have to duplicate my efforts. But the same holds true in terms of Chamber of Commerce or scores or things like that. Is if they have something that they specialize in, we work together so that I'm not duplicating anything, and we really focus on street smarts of business. What do you need to do to get going? And how do you generate revenue as quickly as possible? And how do you increase the amount of revenue that you can generate?
How would you define the street smarts of business?
Um, I mean, almost the guerrilla marketing, or how do you effectively manage your time? How do you start an email campaign that's going to result in generating revenue or growing a list? Typical things that you're not going to find in other places that have been established longer, to put it nicely.
One thing that I think is very cool. So when we think about startup communities, small business communities, we think about people, place, and education. And a lot of times there are these spaces, and forever they've been incubators. Then there were accelerators for a little bit. Maybe there was some funding that went in with those, and they were funding companies, and 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 somewhere along those lines, co-working spaces also came in there. It's really cool that you guys are doing that and giving a place where people can receive help and find other people to do work with. One thing that I think that we found in our work and ways to kind of fill a space, I want to know what your feedback is on this, is that there's kind of four things to really fill a space. Now, that could be an incubator like yours. It could be a co-working space where people are trying to have hundreds of businesses work out of there. Number one is find a champion. And by
Mm-hmm.
that, like, find your voice, find what people are looking for. Obviously, we believe heavily in the whole champion mindset. So that's number one. And anchor tenants. So just like your shopping mall, you have your big anchor tenant that comes in that a lot of people might know, gives you notoriety, and then kind of a bunch of smaller things or not your anchor tenants throughout the business. Age matters, right? And so if you want people to go and find a space and they want to be young and hip, there needs to be young and hip things in that space. If they're looking for a different style space with maybe older clientele, those people are probably going to want to see other older clientele. And then three or four, excuse me, it can't be stale. It can't be boring, because if it is, you might not get people there, and people want to be in kind of a vibrant place. So those are the four things that we think about when we're thinking about filling spaces and how people can do that. What are your thoughts on that?
Dude, you nailed it. I mean, that's it. I mean, it's I don't even know what else there is to say beyond that. But no, I mean, but it's so true, and that's one of the challenges that we face here. We've only been open for a year and a half, so we don't have that anchor client, so to speak. Um, I the analogy that I use for everyone that I talk to when people ask me as far as what successful businesses do you have out of that are coming out of the Launchpad, and we're really like we're an expansion football team, and we kind of draft the players that we draft, and so we're starting out on year one, and so then next year we'll go to free agency. We'll look to see what's out there on the streets, and we constantly improve our roster, and it's going to take a little bit of time, but we have to continue to move forward and better our hand. And one of the things that we focus on here at the Launchpad is making sure that we always celebrate successes. It doesn't make a difference how small that success is. You have to celebrate them because this is a marathon, and we got to continue pushing forward, and that's it.
It's interesting. Something that I think most people don't think enough about, and they only think about the overnight success, if you will, is that it takes a long time for brands to really be noticed. It takes a really long time for people to really get kind of global adoption. And if you
Hmm.
think about it, the majority of things that you purchase are from companies that are at least a decade old. I don't know what brand shirt you're wearing right now, but I almost guarantee it the company's at least 10 years old.
I
The
would agree.
computer that you're using was built in the 70s, right? Decades old, right? The person who you buy your hair gel from, that company is probably
Right.
decades old. The store that you buy it in is also decades old. And so it's this thought of frequency, and that if you can stick with it, you will ultimately, just because frequency is important and frequency matters, you'll ultimately make it just because of that.
Right.
And so how do you tell people to kind of get through those hard times, knowing that it just takes a long time to be seen everywhere?
It does. And you never know where that finish line is. It could be 2 steps away. It could be 2 miles away. It could be 26 miles away. I mean, you just don't know, and you just have to persevere and keep on pushing. And when it comes to, I mentioned to you earlier that it's not a matter about filling the space. And so when we look at companies, we're selective in in which companies that we take. And as you know, I like to run a lot. And when it comes to running, I run marathons, and it takes 3, 4 months to go through a training plan for running. And so when I'm looking at businesses, I mean, I will feel them out in the sense of, do you have what it takes to go through something that it's going to take a long time, and you may not feel like you're getting anywhere for a while, but do you have what it takes to stick through a training plan or a marketing plan or whatever struggle that you're trying to go through to get to that finish line? Because you never know where it is.
How do you gauge that? How do you know that? How do you get them out of that honeymoon phase?
Well, and that's one of the big reasons why we're always celebrating successes. I mean, you just need that little push to get you where you're going, to give you that motivation to keep on going, because you don't know where that finish line is. And just because you cross one finish line doesn't mean that you've crossed the finish line.
So you guys have a physical space.
Yep.
That's great. What do you guys, and so how do people congregate in there, and then how do they congregate then online when they're not physically talking with each other, or do they not?
I mean, we will have weekly meetups with everybody that's in this space. And the big thing that I've always really tried to push is, even if I'm not there, if I can't make that meeting, meet without me. Learn from one another and share with one another what you have going on so that you can learn. I'm not the guy that needs to be there for that stuff to take place. So I really promote them continuing that conversation, so that I'm not the necessary piece. And with that, they've developed those relationships so that when they do have questions, they can reach out to one another, whether if it's within the space or outside the space, to get the answers that they need.
And so when it's not in the spaces there, do you guys use specific kind of communication tools, whether it be a base camp, a just straight up email, a Facebook group, a Slack? Is there something that you guys are
We do have
using?
we have a Facebook page. We're trying to leverage Slack a little bit more. I mean, again, props to you with what you're able to do with 1004. There's a lot of activity there. Uh, just to have them understand and know that there's other places that they can go to get the answers, as opposed to struggling by themselves and getting frustrated.
How do you manage your social media accounts?
Um, it's a lot of time. I mean, right, and admittedly, so that's something that it continues to be a struggle. Just because it is if you want to do it right, it takes a lot of time. So, one, we're really selective in what we try to do. So we're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Um, for the Launchpad, we leverage Buffer, and we will try to. I'll look at my calendar and the week, as far as the events that are happening a week out, and try to schedule as much as we can that we know is things that are going to happen, because we all have good intentions and we think that we're going to be able to push something out a day or two before an event, and then we're overcome with something else. So Buffer is really the way that we try to do it. schedule out as much as we can, but then and then do those instantaneous things that
Paid
when
paid paid buffer account or free buffer account?
we do that. I do the paid, whatever it is, $5 a month or to have 5 accounts.
We've gone through. We went from Hootsuite to Buffer to Meet Edgar, and now back to Buffer. Um, so I know that it's like you said though. It's great intentions, right? We all want to on Monday morning at 2 o'clock tweet something, but if we forget, it's like showing up for the race or showing up for practice every single day. Some people have run for over 1,000 days in a row, and you just got to get started, right?
Right.
And that I think you told me you've ran over 1,000 days in a row.
Yeah, it's like 1,070, something like that. 1,068. I
Incredible.
don't know.
Will you ever stop?
As long as my body feels good, no, I won't.
So actually, I think it's interesting that we'll talk about that. So almost 1,100 days that you've run at least, what is it, 2 or 3 miles? You said.
Yeah, lowest I've ever run is 2 miles for it to count.
Do you think that if you were to stop that once, you would go a long time without running again?
I know my personality, and I know that one day could turn into two, and if two turns into four, then I don't know. I fear what would happen, and it's just now part of my routine. I don't even think about it. I get up in the morning and I go.
It's like when Joe Paterno lost football, how quickly he died right after that.
Right, right.
Have you ever been compared to Joe Paterno and you're running
No,
that slow?
no, not at all. But I
What could someone expect the Launchpad to do for them in a celebration manner? So, what are some of the things that you do to help celebrate them?
I mean, real being there, acknowledging them, telling them that you're proud. As silly or cheesy as that might be, and really, for me, getting to know every person individually, and understanding what makes them tick, uh, and how they're going to be receptive of whatever that action is, so we can maximize that effect. And people are different. Some people want public acknowledgement. Some people just want it individually. I mean, and in that sense, that's where leadership comes into play, and you need to know what's going to make them tick.
Well, how do you understand that as a leader then?
Well, I spend a lot of time with everybody, and I get to understand them as a person. I get to understand why they wanted to start the business. I understand what problem that they're trying to solve, why they're trying to solve it, what their why is. And once you can understand some of those fundamental features, then you just keep on going.
One of the hardest things I think for people in position like you is when a company that you put in a lot of time with decides to throw in the towel.
It's tough.
What are those conversations like? And are you ever kind of saying, "Hey, maybe you need to be thinking about something else," or how does that happen?
That's why I run every day, Zach. I need my outlet. I mean, because I do sleep good at night, knowing that I give everything that I can to help people, and I know that if someone decides to throw in the towel, it's not because I didn't do something on my part, to keep them from succeeding. And no, in all seriousness, that I need an outlet, and that's why I do run. And I kind of internalize everything, what's going on, what happened. Um, think about if I could have done anything different. But at the same time, when I'm out there running, yeah, I think about what can I do with different companies, what things might work, what can we do. But it is tough, and I just have to learn how to not take it personal if a company decides that they just can't do it anymore.
In some cases, I think that what we've built with 1004 allows people to maybe test the waters and
Right?
figure out if it's a good thing for them. I always say, we'd rather them spend a couple $100 with us and realize that it's not for them than to bet the whole house on it and realize, oh my God, like I don't know how I'm going to ever get out of this. Who do you go to to as someone when you need to vent or get something out or ask for clarity from the position in your role?
Right. I mean, you definitely have to have your close friends. And one of the things that I learned long ago was that the chain of command goes up, it doesn't go down. So if you're going to vent, you need to make sure that you're venting to someone who's an equal or someone who's higher, as opposed to some of the other companies that you're working with. Because if you show any sense of negativity or you give them any reason that they should need to start doubting themselves or doubting the environment they're in, I mean, it's a kiss of death. So I have very few people that I keep things real with, because otherwise it just it could unleash other problems or issues.
What was it? The line of power? What did you how'd you phrase that?
About the chain of command goes up, not down.
That's powerful. That's so
Oh,
true. That
it is.
I mean, because you can't complain to someone that's below you,
Right.
and not to say someone's below you, but I mean, if you're in a leadership role and that person is not there, no, that's so true, and that's powerful. Have you ever read the book Think and Grow Rich?
I have not.
So you said something that reminded me of it a couple of minutes ago, where you could be 3 feet away, and
Mhm.
sometimes you just need a second set of eyes to look at it to get through. And in this book, there's a guy who owns some land, I think, and is mining for gold and gets 3 feet away from the gold, but has spent so much time on it that he just gives up and sells it. And then the guy who buys it hires a professional, I guess, to look and say, "Hey, how close are we to this gold?" And he's like, "Oh, we're 3 feet away." And so he ends up getting all of the rewards from it. And so I think the key there is understanding that a second set of eyes or giving yourself a good audit on your business is
Mhm.
important. And it's not about having someone talk bad about your baby. It's about trying to get to where you want to get to. In your
Right.
conversations with the businesses that you work with, how are those conversations molded, knowing that people are concerned about their babies or putting so much into this and they haven't seen it yet, but yet they could be so close, they just need a good audit or a second set of eyes or so?
I mean, that's one of the biggest challenges that we have. And certainly from a screening process of businesses that walk through the door. I mean, our sales cycle, if you want to call it a sales cycle to bring companies in, is relatively long, because we want to kind of understand what their mindset is, if they're going to be coachable. Because if their business is going great, then life is good. But as soon as their business goes bad and they are not coachable, then we're the ones that they're gonna blame as to why they failed. Um, so the first step, we want to make sure that the businesses are coachable, both with me, with everyone around them in the space, but also from a mentorship component. Um,
How do you know if
because
they're coachable?
it's sitting down and having the conversations with them, and getting to know them as people, where they came from. I think one of the biggest questions that I ask and that I've learned from some of my mentors is asking if that founder has ever been in a team sport. So when they're in high school or college, did you play in a sport? If so, what sport was it? Was it cross country when you were by yourself, or were you on a team where you had to rely on other people? And that really it says a lot about people, and as far as if they're coachable.
Tim Ryan, director of the Launchpad in Williamsburg, Virginia, gwlaunchpad.com, dropping some knowledge bombs. You really are. I'm looking at my notes and I'm like, damn, this is incredible stuff. So the Launchpad focuses on three core components: building
Hmm.
a community of entrepreneurs. We talked
Yeah.
about how to do that. Providing education and events to those people. So we talked a little bit about that as well. What are some of the educational things that you guys are doing that are helpful to those businesses?
It, gosh, we do a lot. I mean, we do a lot of events, and it could be anything from how do you start a MailChimp campaign, How do you really leverage social media in a way that you're going to get a return on it? To hook it in with Google. When they have a Google Your Business Online seminar, we'll tap into their live stream. Or we'll have different attorneys or accountants come in and they present how do you structure your business? How do you finance your business with other ways as opposed to raising money? Really going out, pulling the people that are in the community, the people that are in the space, finding out what their trouble areas are, and then going out and finding someone to present on that topic.
One of the strongest things that we probably didn't mention in the incubator piece, we were talking about champions, anchor tenant, age, and not being stale,
Mm-hmm.
is that director or the person that is leading it, who could potentially be that champion as well.
Right.
How important it is for that director to actually have business experience and isn't just another government employee.
Mm-hmm.
You are not that. You have a business experience. You own your own business now as well. You have a small business consultancy called Arc4. How have you found that your position in business has been able to help those other businesses that you're helping from a relationship standpoint, from a mentoring standpoint? Like, am I dumb to think that, or is that actually really important that you have that experience and that's why you guys are filled to capacity and having some decent results?
No, I think it's super important because if anything at all, if someone's trying to BS me with an excuse as to why they're not growing, I know what those pain points are. And quite frankly, when I was first starting out my business, I probably used a lot of those same excuses. So,
What are some
if
of those? Give me an excuse.
I mean, when the phone is 500 pounds and you don't want to call somebody that to try to close them, because if you don't hear the no, there's still a chance. And so that's when the phone gets really, really heavy. But you got to know that the sooner you get to a no, one, you're that much closer to a yes. But then the other thing, you can focus on someone else who could be a yes, as opposed to just hanging on day after day after day that there could be a chance. So,
And I believe Damon John episode 25 said a no is an absolute maybe. And so
that's
you got to
correct.
figure out why a no is a no. And I think that's so
Right.
important. And people are trying to figure out like why, like a no is not a no, right? A no is a metric to track. And
Yeah.
if the answer is no because you want it to be pink instead of blue, and you can make it pink, make it pink. And so
Right.
uh, that might be a crazy outlier, but so often people don't even understand why someone says no. They don't understand why someone said yes. And we do a webinar, and in it we talk about how we got a 1 star review. And I reached out to the person who gave us the 1 star review, and I said, hey, like, as the founder of this business, I'm really sorry that you had a bad experience. Can you tell me what happened so that I can make it better? I'm really sorry. And this person was like, I don't know you. I didn't rate you. And so here I am just trying to figure out what we might have been doing wrong. But it made me realize, like, why is like after someone buys or purchases whatever you sell, like, figure out why they bought it. If they didn't, figure out why they didn't sell it. And
Right.
maybe you just need to manipulate or massage some of the language to communicate with other people a little bit stronger. Are you familiar with the disc profile?
Yeah.
So basically, a disc profile is one side, the D's and I's are extroverts, and the S's and the C's are basically introverts. That's not being exclusively saying that that's 100%, but basically that's what it's saying. If you really deep dive into some of those things, I believe that simple landing pages are probably great for extroverts, and the S's and C's, which are people that like are interested or introverts that are weary of something, they want a lot of data and want a lot of information. They're the ones that want those long form
Right.
kind of landing pages. And so we had a guy for a program that we run. He came in and gave the disc course, and it was interesting because I was like, hey, do you think this is the case? And he's like, I don't know. But I started looking at it, I'm like, I think it is, because I hate long form pages. I want that simple thing, and I'm an I and a D. So it's interesting to think that way. And sometimes when you're communicating with people, if you have different people on the different scales, how you need to communicate with them differently. What are you on a disc, by the way?
I'm trying to think. I don't remember what I was. I've always been one of those guys that's really like the middle of the road.
Okay. Some people have like even
Yeah,
DISC. I'm a high ID. Before I thought I would have been a high D, and that's it. But I'm a high ID. So the reason I ask is when there's people that are different business owners that are different levels of that, or have a different category associated with them. How do you communicate with those people? Some that want to be, you know, communicated with a lot. Some maybe want to be communicated with just a simple email. How do you, as the leader of the pack, kind of communicate with different people, understanding that different people want it in different ways?
right. I mean, communication is the key, and you have to figure that out really, really quick. And I know where my strengths are, and I know where some of my weaknesses are as well. So I have a business partner who is completely opposite of me, and God bless him. Sometimes he'll make me absolutely crazy, but we are in polar opposite ends of the scale. But when I want to go 100 miles an hour, he'll tell me that we need to pump the brakes, and he'll go through and read all the fine print where I would have been 10 miles down the road. So when it came to looking for a business partner, I chose diversity as opposed to finding someone else who was exactly like me, because then there'd be two of us going in the same directions, as opposed to balancing one another out. So when it comes to communication, sometimes his style is better than my style, or he may understand what that person is looking for. Or and one of my things, I take everything really, I don't know if personal is the word. I have a lot of pride in the work that I do, and he may be able to handle those situations better. Whereas I may get offended if someone doesn't like something that we did or produced to them. He can look at it more objectively than I can. So diversity is definitely one of the things when it comes to building your team.
I think that's insanely important, right? Like I'm not good at many things, and the things that I'm good at are basically the only things I do in my business now. And I don't have a partner, but I know that from a creative standpoint, I am not an artist. So I hired a creative director. I am terrible at writing. So I hired someone that's really good at writing. I can be the host of an event, but I'm not good at putting together that event,
Right.
right? And so I found that what I'm best at is things like this. So that should literally be the only things that I do in the business.
Hmm.
And that allows me to focus on that, be very good at that. Hopefully, I'm good at this. And let other people that are good at other skills do those things that can complement and help grow us in that kind of way. We're talking with Tim Ryan, the director of the Launchpad, episode 39 of the 1004 show. You can learn about them at gwlaunchpad.com. Couple of last questions. You were a part of the build out in your space.
Yep.
How did you determine kind of how to build it out to make it so that those things that you want in the incubator and the community can actually be fulfilled?
I took a lot of time and a lot of research, and I went to as many different places that I could. I just to see what they did, how they were set up, tried to leverage the good things at the cool places that I went to see, but also learn from the things that were not so good. So if you need a key card to get into the space, or parking is a challenge, or there's no place to eat or grab a drink when you're done with an event, those are things that we knew that we wanted to avoid. Um, Open, collaborative, welcoming workspace that you knew that had just that positive energy vibe. That was something that we wanted to create. So it was really taking the best of what we found at some places and learning from other places. So I had a chance to go to San Francisco and visit a couple places there. I did some virtual tours online and just tried to gather as much information as I could. And we went to the drawing board.
Very cool. Space is how big?
We have 12 offices. We're about 4,800 square feet. We have a classroom and a conference room, a couple open area tables, if you will, that we do all of our meetings in the open conference room so that everyone can be part of it.
Very cool. What's next for the Launchpad? Second location? That was the toughest question of the deck.
I mean, it really I define our success through the company's success that we have here. So the big thing for me is really to, like what you were talking about from an energy wise, not to make sure that we go stale, produce some winners, and just gaining momentum. That's really the success that I'm going after.
Love it. Here with Tim Ryan, gwlaunchpad.com. Tim is the director there at the Launchpad. Tim, do you still talk to your best friend from high school?
Uh, we're like, I think like everyone, we're connected on Facebook, and we'll chat from time to time. But I mean, it's just one of those things in life. You surround yourself that are people that are interested in the same thing that you're doing, and there's not a lot of people doing what we're doing right now.
What made you cry last?
Uh, Probably watching my daughter score her first goal in field hockey. I know that. I mean, it's just like business, right? I mean, you work so hard for something, and it was the very last game with the last half of the last game, and to see how much work that she put into it, not knowing where that finish line was. She was always very confident in defense. Coach put her in offense, and she had the confidence. Josh, I'm tearing up just thinking about it right now. But and just to see her cross that finish line, it was super cool.
Very cool that I'm making you cry. So let's talk about reflection, right? I think that's what it's about, like reflecting back at what you've done. And you're 18 or so months into this journey at Launchpad. Like, how do you look back? When do you look back? And what are the things that you're trying to think about?
Um, that's a tough question. I mean, our meetings that we have is focusing on those successes. And so I have a little snapshot of every company in this space that I can look at the progression that they've had and to know where they were when they first started. And then if they're feeling down, we can go back and we can look at how much that they've accomplished along the way, just to keep their spirits up, to know that we're moving forward. There's really no success too small not to celebrate, in my opinion.
What are some of the things that you're asking for in that snapshot?
I want to know what they're working on, what their goals are for that particular week. What are you going to accomplish? We do our meetings on Mondays. So what are you going to accomplish this week? What did you accomplish last week? What challenges, if you didn't accomplish what you set out to accomplish last week, what were the challenges that you had and that you needed to overcome? And that gives everybody that's at the meeting an opportunity to weigh in on, hey, I had a similar challenge. This is what I did to overcome it. And so we can.
That's a group meeting?
Yep.
Are people afraid to talk about stuff like that in front of everyone?
I don't think so. I think that one of the things that we focused on here so much is keeping this a safe space. And I think that allowing yourself to be vulnerable is something that's really, really important. And not many people do it. So I see way too many businesses afraid of failure, and way too many business owners that will fall on their sword because they're afraid to show that little crack of vulnerability. Whereas one of the things that I love so much about the entrepreneurial community is that we all help each other and we want to see each other win. So show that vulnerability and get that help. You never know. That could be the thing that springboards you to your wildest dreams. You just don't know.
Love it. Thanks for your time today, Tim Ryan, director of the Launchpad in Williamsburg, Virginia. You guys can learn about them if you live in Williamsburg or in the surrounding area of York County, Williamsburg, or James City County. You guys can potentially work out of the Launchpad, learn about them at gwlaunchpad.com. If you guys are interested in following Tim on Twitter, it's twitter.com/RyanTNT. Appreciate your time today, Tim. Lots of knowledge bombs and a ton of help for other incubator leaders and businesses that might be interested in joining a space. Appreciate your time.
Thanks, Zach. Had fun.
It was awesome.